All right. Genesis 1, 2 through 19. From chaos to order. In this study, we're going to have about 5 points. So as we go through this study, kind of like last week was a little bit of a mixed thing. This one's a little bit more in order, and hopefully we'll keep them in order from here. So it comes from chaos to order. The online dictionary defines chaos as a condition or place of great disorder or confusion. It defines order as a condition of methodical or prescribed arrangement among component parts such that proper functioning or appearance is achieved. What we perceive around us in the universe is reflected in the definition given for order, not chaos. If you were here last week, or you heard the study last week, it should be painfully evident that this order came about by the hand of a creator and not by itself. In fact, there has never been an instant in known history where order has come out of disorder. In the article, The Fine-Tuning of the Universe, we read these following words. According to growing numbers of scientists, the laws and constants of nature are so finely tuned and so many coincidences have occurred to allow for the possibility of life. The universe must have come into existence through intentional planning and intelligence. In fact, this fine-tuning is so pronounced and the coincidences are so numerous, many scientists have come to expose the anthropic principle, which contends that the universe was brought into existence intentionally for the sake of producing mankind. For people to deny the precision and perfection of the cosmos and every detail is impossible. So those who deny the existence of God simply acknowledge this detail and then attribute it to chance, even despite the numerical odds which bring this chance to impossible numbers. Rather than believing such, we need to pull our heads completely out of the sand, look around us, and understand that we humans were, in fact, expected guests of a creation with no other recognizable purpose than to support us. Dr. Paul Davies, the author and professor of theoretical physics at Adelaide University, says it this way. The really amazing thing is not the life on earth. Not that life on earth is balanced on a knife edge, but that the entire universe is bound on a knife edge and will be totally chaos if any of the natural constants were off, even slightly. So you see, David adds, even if you dismiss man as a chance happening, the fact remains that the universe seems unreasonably suited to the existence of life, almost contrived, as you might say, as a put-up job. So as we introduce this today, we'll look over to Genesis 1, verses 2 through 19. There are a lot of information there. And then we could talk on verse 2 alone for many hours. But we'll grab some highlights and wander through these verses. So, our opening text is Isaiah 40, 25 to 26, which says, To whom then will you liken me? Or to whom shall I be equal? Says the Holy One. Lift up your eyes on high, and see who has created these things. Who brings out their hosts by number? He calls them by name. By the greatness of his might and the strength of his power, no one is missing. So may God speak to us through his word, and may his glorious name ever be praised. We're going to go into our first point, the heavens and the earth. All right. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. First there was only God, and then God created. This is what Christians believe, whether we accept this or whether we accept the Big Bang. Doesn't change the fact that there was nothing and then there was something. The only difference is the stupidity of believing that the universe could create itself. In order for the universe to create itself, it would have to have existed before it came to be. Such is the corruption of man that we have to reduce ourselves to something that ignorant in order to get away from God. The Genesis account doesn't tell us how God created. However, the Psalms do. The Genesis account just says he did and then tells us the order in which it took place. The creation account is only 31 verses long, and yet it has been subject of untold hours of thought, countless books, and has been divided into an amazing number of theories. Some believe the account is literal, to be taken as written, 6 days. Some say it represents billions of years of development, and the 6 days represent 6 eras of God's creation. Some say the earth was inhabited and destroyed once before man was created. This is the inhabited, this is known as the gap theory. And it inserts an entire period of Satan's rule and fall on earth between Genesis 1:1 and Genesis 1:2. This idea came as a reaction after Darwin proposed evolution. The list of theories is long and often very complex, but in the end, the Bible really only presents one option. Even the honest non-believer in the Genesis account will agree that God intends for us to believe this is a literal 6-day period. After the initial creation, verse 2 says this: the earth was without form and void, and darkness was on the face of the deep. The terminology for without form and void is tahu v'bahu. Hold on, let me do that again. Tahu v'bahu. From the Hebrew, but let me share how many different times Bible translations have used on this one concept. So we'll go over a few. Formless and void, formless and desolate, formless and empty, without form and void, without form and empty, void and empty, unformed and void, without form and an empty waste, empty and had no form, unseen and unready, chaos and vacancy, soup of nothingness, a bottomless emptiness, barren with no form of life, didn't have any shape and it was empty, waste and void, waste and empty, waste and wild, waste and without form, and welter and waste. Many of these pan together and say basically the same thing. A couple of them throw us off a little bit and say it in a different meaning. But we all translations see what this is stating. So the same phrase, tahu v'bahu, is used one other time in the Bible, and that's in Jeremiah 4:23, speaking of the judgment upon the land because of the rejection of God. I beheld the earth, and indeed it was without form and void. In the heavens they had no light. So verse 2 goes on and continues. And the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. This is the first distinction made in the Bible about the character of God. The word for spirit is ruach, and can also be translated as wind. Because of this, Jewish commentaries and even some Christian translations use wind instead of spirit here. But spirit is far more likely, and in the context makes much more sense. It also parallels Jesus' words about the Spirit in John chapter 3, and so accepted by most Christian translators. What should be obvious is that if the Spirit of God is hovering over the face of the waters back then, that God's Spirit is still hovering over the creation even now. As we live and move and exist, God is hovering around us and directing his creation according to his purpose and his will. Before we move on, we should consider that everything about the creation account is intended to instruct us concerning the workings of God in relation to man. The earth, and in fact the whole universe, has been made for our benefit, not God's. God is complete in himself, and therefore what he has done in the way in which he's done it is for us and our benefit. So we continue. Then God said, let there be light. And there was light. And God saw that the light was, and that it was good. And God divided the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. This is going to open up a little bit, because this day one of creation, which would have been a Sunday, what is the light God created at this time? It is not until the fourth day that the sun in the sky, or the sun is placed in the sky. So there are two main possibilities that have been put forth. The first is that the sun and the stars were created at this time, but were placed where they are now, weren't placed until they are now, until the fourth day. This is possible because a different word than create is used later when the sun appears. The Hebrew word for create is bara, but the word used about the sun and moon and stars on day 4 is asha. This can then mean that they appeared on the fourth day, but were created earlier. However, this would make a simple and obvious reading of both accounts somewhat complicated, just as it's easier to try to reconcile Genesis with evolution by inventing theories which accommodate both. It's also easier to reconcile this light with the sun and stars it is to imagine that God meant a different light. A second point is that the words bara and asha are used synonymously throughout the creation account, like the sun and the stars. God made the firmament, he made the beasts of this earth, and he made man. But it also says he created man. At the end of creation account, and using the term asha, it says, then God saw everything that he had made, and indeed it was very good. So you can see bara and asha used synonymous, same time. Personally, I take that account at face value. God created light on the first day. There is every reason to assume that all the matter of the universe was created immediately, and that then later was rearranged on the days the rest of the account maintains. In other words, we're going to see God create the trees and the fish and the man. So all of that matter for these existed at the same time, and was then rearranged by God, made into different things. So why would we assume that the sun, the moon, and the stars are any different? This light then is part of what was created, not a part of God himself. Some have tried to explain that this is the same light referred to when speaking of God. In the New Testament, it says God is light. In him is no darkness at all. For example, but the light John was speaking of in that verse is the very nature of God, not a created aspect. When God created light on the first day, then a reflection of his nature, not a part of it. So we continue. So on the evening and morning were the first day. This is where the biblical day finds its home. Right in verse 3, each new day starts at sundown. Because of this, even to this day in Israel, the new day starts at sundown, just like ours starts at 12 p.m. Also, the Hebrew here doesn't really say the first day. Instead, it says one day. Yom Akkad. As a parallel to the work of Jesus, just as God created light on the first day, which was a Sunday, he also brought the light of the world out of the grave on the same day. After the darkness of the tomb came forth the shining splendor of the light, which can never be diminished or hidden, the radiant light of eternal glory. So the first day ends, and God saw that it was good. Our second point is the firmament above. Have you ever wondered why people could live to ancient ages before the flood? Or why the rainbow didn't come out until Genesis chapter 9? The first rainbow was 1,657 years after creation. The reason is most assuredly given in verse 6 through 8, which says, Then God said, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. Thus God made the firmament and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament. And it was so. And God called the firmament heaven. So the evening and the morning were the second day. So you can't make a rainbow without a prism to refract the incoming light. In today's world, there are droplets of water in the air which act like prisms as the sun shines through them. Thus, a rainbow is produced. When God created the earth, he made a firmament above it. The Hebrew word is raquia. This was probably a solid and fixed firmament, like a pellucid sapphire above the earth. Thus, the waters above isn't a fantasy of speech, but an actual body of frozen water which kept out all the harmful solar and electromagnetic radiation. So think of it as a super ozone layer. Because of this layer, and that it was there, the light that was needed to produce a rainbow was already refracted, and therefore no rainbows occurred. When Noah stepped out of the ark and saw the rainbow, he also saw for the first time a completely different view of the heavens. There was no ozone layer, and there was a gentle blue, clear color to the sky. He probably saw the sun much brighter than he's ever seen it before. And he finally probably got the first sunburn very quickly. But with this layer, this firmament, not only affected the appearance of the skies and the brightness of the sun, but the solar and electromagnetic rays that were kept out certainly allowed people to live for exceptionally long periods of time. There is no reason at all to assume that people couldn't easily reach immense ages. So add in a higher atmospheric pressure, and the animals themselves would live for great periods. Reptiles, which never stopped growing, could have grown to immense sizes, just as archaeological records show us in the bones of dinosaurs. So day 2 ends without the great irresolvable problems that many people think the Bible holds. In fact, they are all reasonable and probable explanations about the past history of our world. So we're going to point 3, the waters and the land. Then God said, let the waters under the heavens be gathered together into one place, and let the dry land appear. And it was so. And God called the dry land earth, and gathering together of the waters he called seas. And God saw that it was good. So if we remember what we talked about just a little while ago with the ozone layer and everything, we can also kind of look at what we call fractals. A computer-generated fractal landscape looks exactly like an actual landscape, whether it's a mountain scene as viewed from a valley or the outline of an island filled with rivers and trees as viewed from above. These are produced with relatively simple computing devices. When God calculated the landscapes and rivers and trees and gullies and ditches and mountains and the beaches, he did it not in 2 dimensions, but in 3. The great mathematician and author of order brought the waters into submission at the feet of the land. And God asked Job, who has such knowledge? And in Job 38:4-1 it says, where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Tell me if you have understanding. Who determined its measurements? Surely you know. Or who stretched the line upon it? Where its foundations fastened? And who laid its cornerstone? When the morning stars sang together, and all the sons of God shouted for joy. Or who shut the sea with doors, when it burst forth and issued from the womb? When I made the clouds its garment, and thick darkness its swallowing band. When I fixed my limit for it, and set bars and doors. When I said, this far you may come, but no farther. And here your proud waves must stop. The answer to this question shouts back to us, the Lord God Almighty. That's who. 6,000 years ago, through the use of mathematics, so complicated that we couldn't even see them, much less understand them, God created order. And not just order that we can see, we have order that we can hear, we have order that we can smell, we have order that we can taste. We can feel it and we can enjoy it. So if we pick a flower and marvel over the immense beauty of a highly complicated mathematical calculation, one that a loving creator has placed in our midst. Anyone who says, oh, I hate mathematics, has never truly understood the enjoyment which comes from the taste of some fruit. All of this beauty around us, the land that came up out of the waters, and the stable platform for the life we enjoy was prepared. And the anxious creation was getting ready for its expected guest. And God saw that it was good. So we're going to go on our point number 4, splash with 1,000 shades of green. Then God said, let the earth bring forth grass, the herb that yields seed, and the fruit tree that yields fruit, according to its kind, whose seed is in itself on the earth, and it was so. And the earth brought forth grass, the herb that yields seed, according to its kind, and the tree that yields fruit, whose seed is in itself, according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. So the evening and the morning were the third day. So one of my favorite ways to look at this is the third day is when the bread of the earth came forth as wheat, just as Jesus came forth from the tomb on the third day after his cross. The bread of life rose to nourish the earth with the power of his resurrection. And this is the blessings given over the bread even to this day, when communion is taken. Blessed art thou, O Lord, our God, King of the universe, who brings forth bread from the earth. On the third day, there was grass, herb, plants, trees, and fruit. Everything that man would eat for the next 1,650 years. And it was all created on day 3. And I say this because it wasn't until after the flood that God ordained that man could eat animals. So by the end of the third day, things on earth had changed immensely from the way they were just 2 short days earlier. It was so amazingly beautiful that only on day 3 of creation does it twice say that God saw it was good. It's for this reason that many Jewish people choose Tuesday to get married. If God said it was good twice on Tuesday, then it seems perfect enough to set your wedding for such a day as well. But just think of what it's like. At the beginning of this day, there was just land and sea. There was nothing alive, nothing growing, just a barren landscape waiting for the master gardener to dazzle us with his magnificent mind. And the most amazing display of wisdom, love, tender care, and beauty, God provided grass, fruit, herbs, and trees. We can't imagine what the world was like with the complete order and perfection and a bewildering array of every shade of green, perfect and pure. Here are some of the interesting things which we have to this day from God's wisdom, which was revealed on day 3 of creation. Now these are facts. Each watermelon has an even number of stripes on the ride. Each orange has an even number of segments. Each ear of corn has an even number of rows. Every branch of bananas has on its lowest row an even number of bananas, and each row decreasing by 1. So that one row has an even number, and the next row has an odd number. Each stalk of wheat has an even number of grains. And not only wheat, but all grains are found in even numbers on the stalks. And 6 times the Bible specifically mentions even numbers, harvest of 30-fold, 60-fold, and 100-fold. God has caused the flowers to blossom at certain specific times during the day. So that Linnaeus, the great botanist, once said that if he had a conservatory containing the right kind of soil, moisture, and temperature, he could tell the time of day or night by the flowers that were open and those that were closed. Around the world, there are fruits to delight. There are flowers to please our smell and our sight. There are grains of every kind to feed us each day, and there are grasses for the horses that we call hay. Trees give us wood to build all kinds of things, as they give us shelter from harmful things. All of this comes from the Lord Almighty, who is marvelous in wisdom and perfect in his tender care and his creation. And God saw that it was good, so the evening and the morning were the third day. So we're going to go into our last point, which is diamonds in the sky. Then God said, let there be lights in the firmaments of the heavens to divide the day from the night, and let them be signs for the seasons and for the days and years, and let them be for lights in the firmament of the heavens to give light on the earth. And it was so. Then God made two great lights. The greater light ruled over the day, and the lesser light ruled over the night. He made the stars also. God set them in the firmament of the heavens to give light on the earth, and to rule over day and over night, and to divide the light from the darkness. So on the first Wednesday, the world existed. Diamonds were revealed in the sky. Even if there was a solid firmament or frozen water above the earth, it was clear enough to allow these stars to be seen. In fact, it's been theorized that the ozone layer, the firmament, which was the waters above, may actually have acted like a tuning device, which then the sounds of heaven may have been audible to the pre-flood world. If this is true, then an orchestra of pulsars, magnetic storms, and other cosmetic events may have played tunes for the people as they lived out their lives. It's also may have made the stars clearer than the sky, than what we can see now. Today we have all the dust and debris which keeps the atmosphere from turbid than it would have been then. This is all speculation, but for certain we know that the stars were visible through the ozone layer. The Bible says that these stars were set in place for signs and seasons, for days and for years. The word for sign is oah, and this signifies a heavenly portent. Throughout the Bible, heavenly signs are given to alert the people to a divine event. This doesn't mean, however, that we can either predict the future or the nature of things by these signs. So such as through astrology, this is forbidden in the Bible. So the only signs we can use to determine God's hand are those signs which the words tell us have come or are coming, such as when God spoke to Israel about the coming king, which says, go to the slides, the scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet, until Shiloh comes, and to him shall be the obedience of the people. It's believed that the star which appeared at the time of Jesus' birth is the same alignment prophesied here by Israel, as he blessed his son Judah. The constellations were placed in heaven by God as well. In the book of Job, several constellations are named and credited to God's handiwork. And we'll go to Job chapter 9, verses 8 through 10, which says, He alone spreads out the heavens and trends on the waves of the sea. He made the bear Orion and the Pleiades, and the chamber of the south. He does great things past finding out. Yes, wonders without number. In addition to signs and constellations, the Lord placed the heavenly objects up there for seasons, for days, and for years. These things whirl around us with such precision that the Mayans were able to calculate out a calendar so exact that it only loses one day in every 6,000 years. With all of our technology, we still have to add one day every 4 years. By evaluating the movement of the sun, moon, and stars, we can tell what plant, when to reap, and even when to have children. The cycle is fixed, and so we can always tell the best time to do certain things. By the alignment of the stars, ancient architects built pyramids and the tombs of kings in perfect alignment with whatever they were referencing, be it to the north or to a distant constellation. We could talk all day about the marvel of the heavens God has created. Even on the clearest night, the human eye can only see about 3,000 stars. There are an estimate 100 billion in our galaxy alone. And NASA estimates that there will be 500 billion galaxies. So when you look at Andromeda, our closest galactic neighbor, which is 2.3 million light years away. So the light you see would take 2.3 million years to reach it. So if God created the universe 6,000 years ago, which I believe he did, then the light you're seeing from Andromeda came solely from the mind of God as he stretched out the heavens during his creative effort. So if you could have traveled at the light of speed, which is 186,000 miles per second, it would take 100,000 years to cross our galaxy. And God saw that it was good. So in the evening and the morning were the fourth day. And this ends the first Wednesday of planet Earth. All of this marvelous majesty was placed in the heavens and on the earth by the infinitely intelligent and loving Creator. But something happened not long after his act of creation, which has caused a division between God and man. Man disobeyed God, and sin entered the world, and death came about by sin. Now God and man are separated from each other because of their fallen state. But the Bible gives us an answer as to how the separation can be repaired. It is through the gift of his Son, Jesus Christ. As this study is titled From Chaos to Order, if your life seems like chaos and you're looking for order, then I believe the best way to order is through the one who created order out of chaos. And to get to God, we must go through the only way, Jesus Christ. So call on his name today and let him do wonderful and amazing things in you, through you, and around you. That's all we got for this study. Next week will be study number 3, starting in verse 20. That's all I got for this week. You all have a good week, and God bless.